Hi, welcome to True Creeps, where the stories are true and the creeps are real. We'll cover stories from grotesque gore to the possibly plausible paranormal, to horrifying history, to tense and terrible true crime, and everything else that goes bump in the night. We're your hosts, Amanda, and I'm Lindsay, and we want you to join us while we creep. We cover mature topics. Listener discretion is advised. Hey everyone. Today we're going to be discussing the torture and murder of Sam Nordquist. And this actually happened pretty recently. His murder was in early February of this year, which is 2025. And I just said it, that there's torture involved, but this is a pretty graphic one. It's pretty fucking awful what happened to him.
It's horrific.
Yeah, it's pretty disgusting. Investigators, law enforcement, and prosecutors have talked about that this is the worst thing they've ever seen. Proof of evil in the world kind of shit. It's really bad. So just as a heads up, it is a truly awful case, but we do think it's worth discussing.
Yes, for sure. So we want to start off, as always, talking about Sam and who he was. So Sam was only 24 years old when he died. His friends described him as fun and warm, and he loved Puma sweatsuits, cooking, and TikTok. So relatable, right?
Love it. Yeah, relatable. Love a sweatsuit. I'm wearing a sweatshirt right now.
Sam loved the outdoors, and he would go to Mount Rushmore and waterfalls in Minnesota. His mother said, quote, he would give you the shirt off his back. He was very kind, loved his family, loved his nieces and nephew. He was very outgoing and worked hard. Sam was very close to his family. Also, he had 2 cats, one named Pumpkin and the other Storm.
I love those names.
I do too. I've had a cat named Pumpkin before. I love it. Before going to New York, Sam worked for a company who owned group homes for people with disabilities. So very caring. It takes a special person to be able to work in something like that.
It's hard to be a caregiver and to be able to give day after day.
Yeah.
Takes a wonderful human.
Sam's mom, her name's Linda, she also worked there. And one of his coworkers, Matt Partlow, said, quote, we got really close working together. He was such an amazing friend full of life. There's nobody like him, and he didn't deserve none of this. All he wanted was love. It's all he wanted. That breaks my heart.
Yeah.
Matt and Sam both loved cooking, so they would often talk about that, even after Sam moved to New York. So they still stayed in touch.
Yeah.
He worked there for about 6 years, and he found the work fulfilling. Sam also was transgender. Specifically, he was a trans man. So we're going to talk about the months that led up to Sam's disappearance. So Sam went to New York from Oakdale, Minnesota in September of 2024, and he went there to meet a woman that he had been romantically involved with since July. So a couple months. When discussing Sam's relationship with his girlfriend, Sam's mom said, quote, that's all Sam ever wanted, was to be loved and to be in a relationship. And the woman's name was Precious Arzwaga. And Arzwaga and Sam would chat and FaceTime every day. Linda said that Arzwaga love-bombed Sam.
And that is a little bit of foreshadowing because no one describes love-bombing someone in a positive way.
Right.
So Linda was worried about this relationship. And one of the reasons is because there was a 14-year age gap between Sam and Arzwaga. Now, originally, Sam was supposed to fly back to Minnesota in October, but he decided to stay longer and work on his relationship with Arzwaga. And we're going to talk a little bit about his original return date a bit later. So as time went on, Sam's family heard from him less and less. They had location tracking on, so they saw that he very rarely left the motel where he was staying. And so remember earlier, we said that he was very close with his family, like close enough where location services was turned on, right? And yet he was talking to them less and less. So like that's strange. And then remember earlier, we talked about how he loved the outdoors. So it was extra strange that he was just staying inside and wasn't going anywhere. That also really wasn't like him. Now, in December of 2024, Linda was contacted by the Ontario County Department of Social Services about Sam. And this is Ontario, New York. Their Department of Social Services contacted Linda, and they told her that Sam had come to them for help. He said that he missed home, and he told them he was in a controlling relationship. Per the social worker, Sam had told her that Arzwaga was controlling Sam's cell phone usage. She also told Linda that Sam was working on a, quote, escape plan. So he knew something was up, was trying to get out.
Yeah.
Sam was supposed to come back to the office, but he never showed up. The last time Linda spoke with Sam, was to wish him a happy new year on January 1st. He told her he would call her the next day, but he didn't. Now, she did continue to receive texts from Sam's phone until the end of January, but they didn't quite sound like him, and they didn't sound like they had been written by him. If you text regularly with any family member, you know, like, how they are via text.
Yeah,
You can tell the tone of how someone typically talks.
for sure.
So Sam's sister, Kayla, had even sent him photos of her children, who we mentioned earlier he loved very much, but he didn't respond, and that also wasn't like him. On February 9th, Kayla talked to her mom, and she was like, you know what? I think that we should call the police and have them check in on him. Like, something is up.
Yeah.
And from what we've seen, it looks like there may have been several different wellness checks, and we'll tell you why we think that. Because later, Sam's family would say that they think that law enforcement botched at least one of the wellness checks when they went. They talked to Sam, but they talked to him in front of Azraga. They didn't separate them, so it's not like he could be honest, like, hey, I feel unsafe.
Right.
They did it while they were together. And then on a later wellness check, they couldn't find him. So once police couldn't find him for the wellness check, that's when his family filed a missing persons report. Now, Sam's family was planning to go to New York to search for him. But like with any trip, you have to figure out how to get off of work, how to time it, how to afford it, right? It's a far trip, and you can't just leave immediately. Most people can't just drop everything in their life, right? So like they were like, we're going to get there as soon as we can. So this is a direct quote from Sam's mom that is so heartbreaking. But Linda said, we were going to blow horns and drive up and down the streets. I made 300 copies of flyers. We were going to put a flyer on every door, every business, go door to door if we had to. Because if something was happening, or if Sam was to a point where he couldn't go home, or whatever, at least Sam could possibly hear my voice and know Mom's here, Mom's looking.
That really truly breaks my heart.
I know. It's so fucking unfair. When we were typing our notes, we cried. When we said it now, we cried. Like, I can't even imagine how awful this would feel.
Exactly. And that, along with his family, did what they could.
Yeah.
You know, like they tried their best and the system kind of failed them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Truly failed them. Not even kind of. It absolutely failed them in every way.
I would also say that we were dealing with literal scum, and that's part of it too.
Mm-hmm.
Long before this happened, he was existing there and being abused, clearly.
Right.
So I think that, like, while the system did fail him, this was awful. Also, people who were doing awful and terrible things.
Yes.
And notice we're saying people.
Right. Right. Okay, so we're going to move into what happened to him. So again, this is pretty graphic and horrific as we go on. So unfortunately, before Linda could get to New York, Sam's remains were found. His remains were found on February 13th on Payne Road in Yates County, New York. When his body was found, it was found wrapped in plastic, and it was located in a field that was about 20 minutes from a place called Patty's Lodge. Now, Sam and Arzwaga were staying at Patty's Lodge, so 20 minutes from where they were staying. Prosecutors have said that Sam was tortured from January 1st all the way to February 2nd.
That's a long time.
That's a long time, yeah. So there's a lot of details in the felony complaint, and again, these are graphic. So the defendants were, quote, torturing, sexually assaulting him with a table leg and a broomstick, and repeatedly subjecting him to prolonged beatings by punching, kicking, and striking him with numerous objects, including but not limited to sticks, dog toys, ropes, bottles, candles, and wooden boards, resulting in his death. For a month. Yeah, my heart hurts for him and his family.
Yeah. It is despicable that this happened to him, and it is terrible to lose someone you love, but knowing that they went through this,
It's a whole new level.
it's a whole new level.
Sam was also purportedly subject to being doused with bleach, being starved, being forced to ingest feces, urine, and tobacco spit.
And from what we understand, some of these things were happening in tandem with what Amanda had mentioned before. So, like, the bleach part was happening during other things that were happening to him.
Yeah. Also, another horrific detail. Apparently, there were also 2 young children who were coerced into abusing Sam as well. And the kids were only 7 and 12 years old.
So fucked up. From our understanding, they were Azraga's children.
Horrific. The lodge had a few different buildings, but the building where Sam was living had 3 other rooms. Somehow, none of the other people living in these rooms heard Sam during his torture. The room Sam was in the middle of the 3 rooms. And the main building of the lodge was just 33 yards from Sam's room, and yet no one heard him there either.
I find that so bizarre, but also, even if you're just thinking in a place where multiple people live, like people are milling about outside here and there,
Yeah.
it's not a huge place, but I would be surprised if under 50 people lived there and just like that no one heard him.
Right. I wonder if they had some sort of other noise drowning it out, like loud music or something.
Also, it seemed like a place where people would stay when they were like down on their luck, or
Right.
there were people who were recently released from prison that were living there. So there was a lot of different people who were living there, and it's possible that it was also a noisy place generally.
Right.
It was also pretty close to a road, so
Yeah.
that could play into it.
One of the people who lived in a neighboring home to Patty's motel, her name was Tara Maurice. She wept when she heard what Sam had endured. She wished that she could have helped him, and her home was a few dozen feet from Sam's room, so it really hit her. It hurt her. So knowing that that was so close to her home and her family really, really hit her hard. And as of March 27th, that's when we're recording today, the medical examiner or law enforcement has not yet released the results of Sam's autopsy or his exact cause of death. So that's still being investigated.
So let's get into the investigation. Law enforcement believes that Sam was murdered at Patty's and that his remains were then taken to Yates County. On February 14th, the New York State Police charged 5 suspects with second-degree murder. And those were 33-year-old Kyle Sage, Patrick Goodwin, who's 30, Emily Mojoka, who's 19, Jennifer Quijano, who's 30, and Azuraga, who we've talked about already, who's 38. Police said that the assailants tortured Sam for more than a month. We're going to bounce back and forth between time a little bit here and there. So on February 20th, 2 more suspects were arrested, and that was Kimberly Socha, 29, and Thomas Eves, who's 21. They were also both charged with second-degree murder. When we're talking about the murder of a person who is trans, quite reasonably, one might assume that this was a hate crime. However, law enforcement does not believe that it was. And they say the reason is because some of the, we're going to say alleged murderers, but we know what we think, identify as LGBTQ+. So because of that, they're like, no, this couldn't have been a hate crime. And per a press release from the Ontario County DA and New York State Police, this is some information they've included, okay? They talked that about a hate crime per New York penal law is an offense committed in whole or in substantial part because of a belief or perception regarding race, color, national origin, ancestry, gender, gender identity/expression, religion, religious practice, age, disability, or sexual orientation of a person, regardless of whether or not the belief or perception is correct. So to determine whether Sam's murder was a hate crime, you would ask, was Sam murdered because he was trans? We don't know.
Right.
The assistant district attorney for Ontario County, Kelly Wolford, said, a hate crime would make this charge about Sam's gender or about Sam's race, and it's so much bigger. To limit us to a hate crime would be an injustice to Sam. Sam deserves to have his story told in its entirety. And I do think that's a good point.
Yeah.
That when we're talking about a person, anyone, anytime, about anything, we are all more than the sum of our like different identities.
Yeah. I think that's fair.
He wasn't just a trans person of color. He was Sam, who loved cooking and outdoors and Stormin' Pumpkin and his family. I know and love lots of trans people, and the least interesting thing about them is that they're trans. And if you're thinking, clearly these people hated Sam to be able to do this. Yeah, I agree. I agree that that's likely true. But then every murder would be a hate crime. And it is so important to be able to understand when there is a situation where someone murders someone because they hate that person versus when you murder someone because you hate who you think they are.
Yeah.
We are living in a world where people are hating what people think people are all the time. And it creates a very dangerous and scary landscape. And being able to differentiate those two is important. I will say one of the things that I thought was a relief is that we read so many articles, so many Facebook posts because we wanted to know about the shitbirds who did stuff. We'll get into more of that in a second. But in all the things that we read, do you know what I didn't see? I never saw, even once, a person saying, well, he deserved it. He was trans. Not even fucking once. And I was like, hell yeah, we're all on the same page. No one deserves this. Even if you don't understand trans people, no one deserves this.
Yeah, kind of united people finally.
A united, like, hell fucking no. You don't do this to people. If you do, something's wrong with you.
Yeah.
And so, all that to say, this is clearly a hateful act, but it's not a hate crime in the narrow definition of the law. It's important to be able to differentiate the two. Now, I will say, penetrative sexual violence against a trans man, that could be a hate crime. That could be because he is trans. We don't know all the facts of the case, but based on what we know right now, we don't have any awareness of facts of the case that point to this horrificness being caused by his transness, not by something else or inherently fucking wrong in these defendants. You feel me?
Exactly. Yeah.
Rape is a power move, and sexual violence against people who have a vagina is inherently a gender-based crime, right? Rape is a gender-based crime because most people who are raped are vagina owners, and his non-performance of a gender role is perhaps one of the reasons why.
Yeah.
So, talking more about the investigation and the charges, law enforcement executed search warrants at apartment 22 at Patty's Motor Lodge, which is where they were staying. And this included electronic devices, clothing, and personal effects. Now, the arraignment already did happen, and the official charges that were listed out were, because before it was just second-degree murder. Now it is first-degree murder, second-degree murder, kidnapping, conspiracy, and endangering the welfare of a child. Then, all defendants except Thomas Eves were charged with concealment of a human corpse. 4 of the defendants were also charged with aggravated sexual abuse, and Arzuaga was also charged with 2 counts of coercion. There's also a no-contact protection order placed for the 2 children that have been present for the abuse. Given all of these very specific charges and who's charged with what, it does seem like they have a clear picture of what went on in room 22.
Yeah, it does.
And it makes me think that perhaps that one of the defendants actually spoke up and was like, you know what, I'll tell you what happened. Because knowing that Eves was possibly not present for when they were concealing Sam's remains, that speaks to them having knowledge of what was like happening.
Yeah, I wonder if one of them gave some more insight to it in a attempt to get a plea deal or something like that.
It could also be that there was digital evidence too, I wonder.
That's true. So let's talk about these assholes and that they've always been assholes.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They're just bad people. So Arzuaga, let's talk about her first. In July of 2016, Arzuaga was charged with animal cruelty and failure to provide sustenance to a confined animal.
Get fucked.
This hurts my heart so much. So she had locked up her pit bull, named Princess, in a 4x6 shed without food or water.
Ew.
The shed had poor ventilation and was filled with urine and feces. So already we know that she's just a piece of shit. But who does that?
Yeah.
Also to note, pit bulls are perfect.
Pit bulls are perfect. If you could do that to an animal, you could do it to a person.
Yes, absolutely. From what we could see on Facebook posts, Goodwin and Arzuaga knew one another from high school. Arzuaga was abusive in previous relationships, so she continued that. She was very adamant that she was not going to hurt Sam in her communications to Sam's sister, Kayla. She asked someone how to hide a body, which I don't know why you would put that out there.
That feels dumb.
Mm-hmm.
Red flags abound.
Her whole life is a red flag, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There are pictures of her smiling on New Year's. And remember, that's when the torture began. Remember, that was a whole month of torture.
Mm-hmm.
So she's just smiling. We also saw some posts about her on Facebook. So we can't confirm these people knew her or anything, but they seem like they did. So the first one says, people in this damn world have gone nuts and it's going to get worse. That Precious hasn't been right ever. She was in foster care when my oldest was in respite, and she was trying to steal my daughter's belongings.
Ugh.
I say bring back the death penalty and give it to them all. Yikes.
Hmm.
Another Facebook comment is, This person can definitely say Precious and Goodwin went to the same school. So they're confirming her story.
Yeah, and some people are like, I think one of the things that people ask were like, how did these people find each other? How did this collection of monsters form?
Right.
And it's like, okay, some of them went to school together.
And then another comment is if you go on Precious's mother's Facebook page to the New Year's Eve celebration, Precious is there smiling and happy. She's a see you next Tuesday. And I agree.
I also agree.
Now, let's move on to Thomas Eves. And this is Azraga's son. In 2022, Eves, along with 3 other men, beat up and robbed a 16-year-old and left him unconscious on a trail where they attacked him. Horrific.
Mm-hmm.
They took his shoes and his cell phone. And the kid who was attacked was lured to the trail by people who he thought were his friends. Eves was charged with 2nd-degree robbery, 4th-degree conspiracy, 3rd-degree assault, endangering the welfare of a child, and larceny. Next person, Patrick Goodwin. Goodwin was sentenced to 10.5 years in prison in 2015 for sexually abusing a 7-year-old boy and a 9-year-old girl. The pattern that we're seeing is none of these people have good backgrounds.
Yeah, they're straight fucking garbage.
They've done really, really shitty things throughout their lives.
Yeah.
So the next person we'll talk about is Kyle Sage. And Facebook is full of people talking about their experiences with Sage. Several people said that Sage had stalked them. They also talked about how he had a notebook of people and would list details about them, like their address, what kind of car they drove, where they worked, etc. So
unsettling.
That's weird. Yeah. Several also said that he threatened to hurt them. And then others said how he would create multiple social media accounts and they would block him on all of them because he would just continue to harass them. So he'd be trying to find different ways to get in contact with them and be an asshole.
Men and women were posting comments, but when it comes to his list, some of the women were saying that it was particularly women who turned him down who were on those lists, who I'm like, hell yeah, you fucking turned him down.
Right.
Nothing good's going to come from him. Yeah.
Right. But that's scary because you don't know what he's going to do with this list.
Yeah, fair. Like, why do you have this information?
I hate this.
Yeah.
So let's move on to Sam's family. Sam's mom said, quote, "The people who did this to Sam are pure evil." We absolutely agree.
Mm-hmm.
Quote, "They're not even human, and we will get justice for you, Sam. We will get it if it takes the last breath out of me." It's sad that this is going to be the rest of her life is thinking about these horrible people and what they did to her son. Ugh, breaks my heart. And then a family friend named Rose said, quote, "I still can't comprehend the cruelty that we have in this world that we live in. It breaks my heart that people can be so evil. I just want justice for him." Sam's remains were returned to Minnesota on February 22nd of 2025, and his celebration of life was at the beginning of this month, so on March 3rd. The next hearing is scheduled for April 9th, and we will continue to provide updates on this case, likely in our True Crime Digest episodes.
And also, depending on how much detail we find, it might end up being a subsequent episode to this because there is so much we don't know.
Right. Sam's sister, who we've mentioned a few times, Kayla, has a GoFundMe so that they're able to fund traveling, being off work, and attorney's fees. And we'll link it in our show notes too. This wouldn't be the first time that we've seen a victim's family hire an attorney to be their spokesperson. And that also has expensive costs. And unfortunately, a lot of the time it's necessary now.
Mm-hmm.
They want to be able to travel for the criminal cases, and they're all going to be coming from Minnesota. So it's going to be some decent travel and having to stay in New York and everything like that. So
yeah,
if you want to take a look at it, again, it'll be in our show notes.
Yeah. Sam's case is absolutely heartbreaking. This case was publicized more than a lot of violence against trans people generally is. It does appear that law enforcement is taking this murder investigation seriously and that his killers will be brought to justice. But I just want to point out that when we're talking about the systems and how things work and who gets prioritized when it comes to law enforcement, it's often marginalized populations that are ignored or they're deprioritized or all sorts of things. So in that vein, we wanted to just take a quick moment at the end of today's episode to touch on being our kindest selves. And you might be wondering, what is this for? If we can build a world where we're all more loving, then maybe we all get justice. Maybe we can correct our systems or make new ones so that It's not just one type of people who get prioritized when it comes to these investigations, where families don't have to push law enforcement to find their missing loved ones or to find justice. It is good for everyone if people who do bad things are caught.
And quickly before it happens again.
And quickly. But okay, let's just talk about this. It'll be quick. It'll be loving. From your aunts. We generally think that most people are not trying to exist in a way that is harmful or hurtful to others. But also, quite specifically, we think that you, and like literally you, person who is listening to this right now, we genuinely believe that you yourself are committed to being kind to others. And here's why. Because there are what feels like infinite podcasts out there, right? There's so many. But here you are, choosing us, which we greatly appreciate, but we're pretty committed to being kind humans. And True Creeps, we've never hidden that, right? Like when we talk about true crime cases, we talk about victims up front. We care about them. We've heard about their families, about respecting them as who they are as people. And you are here listening because you care about those things too. So we know that you're a kind human. So with all that being said, maybe you happen to be a person who, when Amanda said earlier that Sam was trans, you felt some sort of gut instinctual, not so great feeling. Like, you can't name it. It just felt like a discomfort, like a flip in your stomach. Maybe that was you. If that is true, maybe that's worth exploring. We are, all of us, out here trying to just exist with the world being, frankly, overwhelming. There's chaos everywhere. Regardless of your political affiliation, I think that we can all agree that it's all overwhelming and there's a lot to think about and deal with. And we all just want to exist, and we want the people who we care about to flourish in the world.
Yes.
And with that in mind, when we think about the world and how we want it to work and how we want our systems to be set up around us, we think about it in the context of our own lives, because of course we do. The things that impact you are going to matter the most. And maybe you've never met a trans person, or you're not aware of whether you have, because you don't always know.
No.
And you don't have much context for them. So then you end up kind of believing the story that you're told rather than having a full picture and being able to make your own mind up about what you, lovely human person who cares about others, thinks about other lovely human people who are simply trying to exist and flourish.
Yes.
How could you know what your opinion on them is if all you have is what other people have told you what to feel about them?
I think that's fair.
That feels pretty fair. And when we don't have a full picture and all the details about anything, really, it's kind of hard to develop a perception that's ours. Otherwise, it's just us taking the words of people who we trust. And sometimes the people who we trust have biases that we don't know about, because everybody has a bias. We all do. So we're just asking you to form your own opinion, because perhaps if the idea of someone being trans made you uncomfortable, maybe it's like because you don't feel like you understand them. And you're a smart person who is kind and cares about people. People who know you say you're warm. They say you're loving. You're a good parent. You're a good cousin. You're a good aunt. You're a good uncle. And you know that you, as this wonderful human, if you can't understand it, could it be right? And then the more you focus on like, well, if I can't get them, then something's wrong. Something's like that. Something's just not right. It's just not right. It's what you hear people say when it comes to trans people. And then that kind of does a little festery thing. Because isn't that what our brain and our hearts do sometimes when we don't get full pictures, when we don't have all the details and we don't have all the facts? We start filling in blanks. And the blanks we fill in are never good when we don't have a full story. So then this small discomfort can become a big hate, and then it can get worse. So maybe you're there and you had a gut reaction about a facet of a person that doesn't harm someone else. And we are so lovingly urging you to explore that, because you are a person capable of being the most loving version of yourself. And if you've got questions or curiosities, honestly, about anything, but particularly with trans people, because maybe you don't feel comfortable asking questions to people who you know, ask us some questions. Your curiosities, send them our way. What we can answer, we'll answer. If we can't, we'll direct you to a resource that we think would be fair, kind, loving, and helpful to you.
And no judgment from your questions either.
Yeah, I want you to ask those questions. But anyway, we're here. We're ready. We're going to do the emotional labor. We want to be the best allies we can be.
Right. And your names will never be out there anywhere either.
So let's talk about how we can practice this kindness in the world. And also about some basics of interacting kindly with others, because maybe you haven't encountered these tips in your life yet. Okay, we're going to go into definitions first. Gender identity is how a person perceives themselves. I perceive myself as a woman. It's a little easier for me to exist generally in the world because that's in congruence with the sex I was assigned at birth. But I think either way, gender expression is how you show how you perceive yourself to the outside world. through clothing and body and mannerisms and grooming. So for me, my gender expression matches that of what is societally prescribed, if you will, to women in America. I like my hair longer. I like to wear makeup, a little mini skirt action. I like the shape of my body and the curves that I have. So, okay, that's my gender expression. So I, as a woman who was assigned female at birth, I have a gender identity. It's not only trans people who have a gender identity.
Right.
Don't talk about it because when it matches what you were assigned at birth, it doesn't feel like, oh, but it's not invisible. It's there. When you're thinking of this gender expression, think about all of the ways in which people can tailor their appearance to fit the beauty ideal. For example, women might have breast augmentation.
Or several celebrity men have gotten things like hair plugs or transplants or whatever you want to call it. They've gotten their jaw reconstructed to be more angular or however they feel best. But that's a part of it as well. And doing something to change your appearance to feel your authentic self. It doesn't necessarily have to only be trans people doing this. It's anything we do. Lindsay and I dye our hair various colors.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I dyed my eyelashes. What a treat that was.
That sounds awful.
It was great.
Every person has done something to feel better about themselves in some fashion.
Yeah.
Not because someone told them to, but because they feel better doing that. And it shouldn't only, I feel like it's like a buzzword when you talk about trans people and the way that they change themselves versus how any human would change themselves to feel authentic.
Yeah, and it doesn't even have to be like necessarily like change in terms of like your body. Think about like the pair of pants you put on.
Yeah.
The section in the store you shop, the length of your hair, how you groom. Do you shave your legs? Do you not shave your legs? Do you pluck your brows? Do you not pluck your brows? If you do, what shape do you have? Right? So all that stuff. But okay, so gender identity, how you feel about yourself. Gender expression, how you show other people how you feel about yourself. So a transgender person is a person whose gender identity or gender expression differs from societal expectations of the sex that was assigned to them at birth. Sometimes people get a little bit like mixed up between the difference between a trans woman and a trans man. So when we talk about trans people, we're going to honor the person that they perceive themselves as. So trans woman, first off, aka a woman. Let's say that, right? But typically assigned male at birth. Trans man, but again, aka man or woman. Just like I'm not typically walking around being like, I'm a cis woman. I'm like, I'm a woman. It's like, I don't need to give a qualifier. And a lot of people who are trans don't. They just say, I'm a man, I'm a woman. But anyway, so when you're talking about anyone, either use the name they introduce themselves as, or they've expressed that they prefer, or that you know that they prefer. After all, if your friend whose legal name was James asked you to call him Jim because he doesn't really like James, you probably just call him Jim because you're not an asshole.
Yeah.
And also, while we're talking about it, we all have pronouns, but you're going to use the pronouns that the person tells you that they like to use. If you don't know, you could ask, or you could just use they. Like in the statement I just said, we use pronouns in between when we're going to say someone's name. So in the statement I just said, let's act like there weren't pronouns. You ready? It's going to sound ridiculous. Your friend, whose given name was James, asked you to call Jim Jim because Jim doesn't like James. It doesn't even make sense. It sounds like we're talking about several people.
Yeah.
So we use pronouns because it makes sense. Now, if you purposely decide to not use someone's pronouns, why make someone feel unpleasant? Every trans person's experience is unique. I'm just telling you that you could make someone feel bad. Why would you want to do that? We're loving people. We don't need to do that. If you don't know someone's pronouns, you could use they or them. You know, like what we do when we don't know the gender of someone. For example, if I was asking you about your cousin who I don't know, I might say something like, I am so excited to meet your cousin. Do you know what time their flight is?
Or if you found keys in a parking lot, I found their keys.
Yeah.
They will be looking for them. You don't know. It's easy.
We automatically do it.
Yes.
You can do it. Even when you're trying to be your best, kindest, most loving self, you might misgender someone on accident. You can apologize and move on and continue to work to be better. Just don't be a dick about it. It feels bad when you do something rude, especially when it was on accident, and some people have a visceral response to that, which is why we say it. But okay, we've talked so much about how loving and kind you are. So Let's wrap this all into a beautiful cake of deliciousness of kindness because I don't know how to wrap it up and I got weird. But earlier I talked about that you might not know a trans person, right? That you might know the concept of a trans person that you've been fed. And so you don't feel like you understand them. And it's possible that you haven't met a lot of people in your life that you don't understand. But you don't really need to understand someone to be kind to them. If you get most of the people in your life, this isn't a thing you've ever had to think about. So now, like, you're an adult and you're presented with this idea and you're like, what? Okay, hear me out though. Chances are, I do thoroughly believe this, dear you person. I already think that you are likely not the sort of person who bases someone else's worthiness and of love and respect and kindness on your personal understanding of the world. AKA, the bar of someone else's worthiness of kindness is not conditioned on your perception of them. Similarly, you are worthy of love, kindness, of respect. So we're going to get into a little scenario because I'm going to prove it to you. That even if this all is new to you and you are working through it, that you're already here. You're already loving. You're already kind. You're already ready for this. So, okay, for the purposes of the scenario, you are a person who has a very large and intense fear of snakes. And you simply cannot understand why anyone would ever want one as a pet. Tuck that away. It'll make sense later. So, in this scenario, you are the proud new parent of a puppy that is like top tier levels of adorable. You are in the puppy honeymoon stage. They have yet to pee on various surfaces of your house. There's been no emergency room visits that are like way too expensive. Puppy honeymoon stage. Amanda, what's the name of our puppy here?
Well, my puppy's name is Spectre, so let's go with Spectre because he is cute and sometimes doesn't do bad things.
Sometimes. Love that. Okay, so you're the proud new owner of Spectre the puppy. You're also, today, in line to get a cup of coffee. If you don't drink coffee, just replace it with whatever beverage you want. And at this coffee shop, your neighbor's kid, Bobby, works there, and they're a pretty good kid. Now, before you walked in, you were like, oh, I'm going to show Bobby the new pictures of Spectre because they haven't met it yet. And so you're also like, you know what? I can also, when I'm showing pictures, I can ask them if they can walk Spectre next week when I have to stay late for work. As you look at the counter, you notice there's two people standing there. One of them is Bobby. And then there's another person. For the sake of this, we're going to call them coworker. But you kind of notice that they don't seem to be in a great mood. But you're like, okay, whatever. You go back to like scrolling, trying to figure out which pictures of Spectre you're going to show Bobby. And you're like 5 people back. So there's a few people in front of you. And as you're standing there, coworker goes into the back for a few minutes. And when coworker walks back out, it's pretty clear that they just had like a quick moment to cry and that they're like doing their best to hold themselves together while they're at work. Now, during that time, Bobby got through a few other customers already that were in line in front of you. So when they come back, there's just one person in front of you. So coworker takes the next customer, that person in front of you, and you hear coworker apologize to the customer that they're helping because they made them wait a few minutes longer. Now, Bobby's still taking another customer's order, and you're a little bit nosy and curious because you're like, what is going on, right? Also, like, what are you doing? You're standing there. You're a little bit nosy. And you hear coworker say, I'm so sorry about the wait and holding you up. Last night, my snake, who wasn't even a year old, died unexpectedly. And it was really surprising, and I'm really upset, and I'm trying to hold it together, but I'm so sorry. Then they go in to take the person's order. And then you're up. It's your time to order coffee or whatever other beverage you're getting and show Bobby your photos. You've been waiting for this, remember? You've been scrolling, picking your photos out. You planned it before you even walked in. Now, knowing the person that's standing next to Bobby is grieving the loss of their pet, they're like 2 feet away. Are you still going to gush about Spectre? Are you still going to bring up your joy and excitement about your pet, knowing that the person standing right next to you is grieving the loss of theirs? I'm going to pause. I feel like the likely answer here is no, because you know that you don't need to understand why coworker would want a snake for a pet to understand that they're grieving. You don't need to know them personally to care that hearing about someone else's new pet might not feel good right now. It might kind of just put a little salt on that wound. And even though it means that you'll have to reach up to Bobby separately to ask for that favor, so it does kind of inconvenience you, you likely won't bring it up because why hurt someone else if you don't need to?
Yeah.
You don't need to know them to understand their grief, to understand that they're worthy of trying to heal in that moment. You don't have to get them really in any other way other than as a human to care. You can do this. How many times have you been kind to a stranger for no other reason other than the fact that why wouldn't you be?
Right.
I'm sure it's lots of times. But all that to say, our base is love, you know?
That thought process could go along with pretty much anything, to be honest. Anything. So that concludes our little lesson on being loving. We're true creeps. Where the stories are true, the creeps are real. And we will be your loving aunts.
I love that for us. In that same vein, we were recently told on our Bat Bonfire that a child tried to convince their father to stay home from school. And when his dad was like, well, why? He went, Jersey Devil, 10 out of 10. 10 out of 10.
He said he mysteriously got an illness.
Kudos. Well done, child.
It made me laugh, and I just love our Bat Bonfire. So if you have any other little fun stories like that, we love to hear them.
Yeah.
And with that being said, if you have case ideas too, throw them our way. We want them. If you want things explained, we're here. We're doing it. We're doing our best.
Yeah. Today was a hard case to cover because what Sam endured was just so terrible. And we do hope that his family gets to feel like some sort of closure as this case unfolds. So,
yes.
Again, we will include updates in our True Crime Digest.
We will, yes. And with that, have a good weekend.
Thanks for creeping with us.
Thanks for listening, and as always, a special thank you to our patrons who support us via Patreon.
Please see the link in our show notes to learn more about how you, yes you, can begin to haunt the dump, guard vortexes, or even become a scorching Sasquatch.
Ooh. Also in our show notes, you can find the link to our website, more information on our sources, our social media handles, and our merch store.
We'd love for you to keep creeping with us. So if you like this episode, please subscribe, rate, review, and share the show with your fellow creeps and or ghosts.
I beg of you.